Hola, my name is Beitel. Y voy. Oh my god. Hola, my name is Beitel. Y hoy vamos a hablar de Primos. Sí, I hear this show is insane and super bad y racista. Pero ¿es cierto? Bueno, averiguamos hoy. Okay, time to stop acting like a Latino stereotype and get serious. Hi, I rebranded my channel to Beitel, so it would be awesome if all of you called me that now. Also, hi, it's been a while. Life has been quite busy, so I haven't been uploading videos as much as I used to. Not that I was ever consistent with my upload schedule, let's be honest, but hey, I'm back. And today, I want to talk about Disney's new upcoming show, Primos, since it's set to come out this month on July 25th. And now that we have more trailers and more info about the show, I wanted to take a more, let's say, deep dive approach to this topic. To give a quick summary, on June 13th, 2023, Disney revealed the intro for its newly announced show at the time, Primos. And let's just say the internet went haywire, specifically the Latino and Latin America side of the internet. There was criticisms of harmful stereotypes, racism, and terrible Spanish grammar. As someone who is bilingual and Latino, I found myself agreeing with some of the criticisms. But I do also feel that some of them were quite harsh and unwarranted. And the responses to the backlash of a certain crew member sure did not make the reputation of this show any better. But now that we have more information and updates, I would like to go back in time and analyze the criticisms, the responses to the criticisms, and some issues we Latinos have in our communities. And finally, how we see Primos going forward. Anyways, I don't know how to transition. Vamos, amigos! First off, one of the biggest criticisms of Primos was its awful Spanish. In the intro, the main character sings the words Oye Primos, which is obviously bad Spanish grammar, like what the fuck? The correct way to say this would be Oigan Primos, since the word primo in this case is plural. I see why many Latinos, including myself, felt bothered by this. Imagine a non-Latino person or kid, especially a kid, since this is the target demographic, saw the intro and thought, oh, that must be how you say hey cousins in Spanish. Yes, perfect. That would not be great, would it? However, according to the creator of Primos, Natasha Klein, this was on purpose, as Tater does not know how to speak Spanish, due to the fact that, well, she resides in LA. And new updated content has shown us that, yes, she isn't very good with spelling and speaking in Spanish. Heck, sometimes she doesn't even know certain words. As someone who is a second-generation Latino immigrant, I can say, yes, this is not uncommon. A lot of Latinos who grew up or were born in the US, like me, never got the opportunities to properly learn Spanish. I will get into this in another section, but it seems the creator had good intentions when making this error, particularly wanting Latino kids who don't know Spanish to relate more to this show, since Natasha herself has said in the past that she herself did not learn how to speak Spanish either when she was a kid. But again, I will get into the logistics of that in another section. While having Latinos that don't know the language in media is good representation, it's also good to consider the non-Latino children who are going to see this show, as they could pick up the wrong ideas about the language just from seeing this intro. And yeah, I do not want that. Moreover, there was also complaints of negative stereotypes. The whole concept of Primos revolves around the large Latino family living in a low-income household. While I do agree this is pretty stereotypical, we have to consider that, again, this is based on the creator's experience, as she herself lived in the same situation and environment as Tater did. I may not have grown up in a low-income household, but I will admit I did grow up with a large family full of many aunts, uncles, and cousins. Many Latinos have, which is why there is so much media revolving around big Latino families living under one roof. It's not uncommon. I remember having to visit my family almost every week and deal with my many cousins almost on the daily. I know it sucks to admit, but some stereotypes are just based on reality, and there really isn't much we can do about it. But I do agree that some of the names given to these characters are quite stereotypical. For example, one of the characters is literally named Nacho, and the other one is named Nachito. Then there was the one that really riled me up, which was Cuquita, which, I think everyone knows at this point, but it literally means in Spanish. There was also another character named Gordita. I'm kinda mixed about that. For those who don't know, gordita in Spanish means fatty, but for a girl. The one for males is gordito, but we tend to use this word in a loving manner. Parents call their children gordita or gordo, and even people in relationships will call their significant others gordita or gordo as well. Or it could be just used as a nickname. However, while the name is pretty generic, like Nacho, it's not as bad. I just find it quite uncreative, since there are many Latino names out there to use for these characters. Also, Terremoto Heights? Really, bruh? I get this complaint as well, due to the fact that terremoto means earthquake, and lots of earthquakes do happen in Mexico. But this show takes place in LA, not Mexico, but earthquakes happen in LA as well. So either way, this looks bad. This is like naming a city in Florida Hurricane Hills or something. Actually, going back to the Mexico thing, lots of people thought this show took place in Mexico, not the US. I can honestly see why. I mean, the intro introduces the audience to the stereotypical yellow tint that lots of American movies and shows use for the country. Also, some of the houses, for example, did look like they came from Latin American countries, furthering people to believe the show takes place in Mexico. So I can't really blame people for believing that the show took place in that country. The environments just look very similar to it. Not to mention, someone got a hold of the Pitch Bible, and oh my god, it uses the word Latinx to describe Latinos. Ugh. Okay, let me get straight to the point. I know for a fact that a majority of Latinos hate this word, including myself. First off, this word could not be pronounced in Spanish. If someone were to pronounce this in Spanish, they would say it like Latinx, which does not sound natural, does it? This proves that the people who created this word had zero consideration of how our language even works. So they just lazily added an X to the end of Latino, putting itself in a weird position that doesn't even naturally transition to our language. If you really want to use a gender-neutral term for Latino, just use the word Latina. It sounds natural, it can be pronounced in Spanish, and the suffix E is already gender neutral, so no need to do all that hard work of unnecessarily adding the X. Okay, back to Primos. As you can tell, there was valid criticisms towards Primos, and Latinos had every right to be angry. Heck, even I wasn't too happy about some of this stuff, due to the fact that representation of Latinos is quite rare, particularly on the animation front. And when it comes to other forms of media, it can be quite hit or miss, depending on who you ask. Now, this saga of hate could have died down in just a few days, and people would have moved on and forgotten about it like nothing had ever happened. But no, the voice actress rotator, Miriam Velasco, decided to add more gasoline to the fire by making an atrocious response video.
The Spanish language is not a Latin American language. It's a language the Spanish conquistadors forced upon Latin American people. The only reason we're Latin people and not Native American people is because of that distinction. So be mad at me all you want for misspelling words in Spanish. Be mad at me all you want for mispronouncing words in Spanish. That doesn't take away from the fact that I am a Mexican American, Native American woman. We're trying to make a good show for kids that feel left out, for kids that are different, for kids who don't have a full grasp on any language, no matter where they live. And if you're gonna be mad at that, I don't know.
Be mad then.
As we all saw, Velasco was quite dismissive of the justified criticisms, excusing the Spanish errors because Latinos were colonized. Yeah, it's not like the colonization happened hundreds of years ago, and Latin America has changed drastically since then. What am I supposed to do with my language then? Just give up on it? Also, chalking up Spanish to just a colonizer language is such a dick move. Spanish is quite a diverse language because every Latin American country has their own dialects and different ways of saying Spanish words. Also, when she said, be mad at me all you want for misspelling words in Spanish and be mad at me all you want for mispronouncing words in Spanish, I got extremely ticked off. You're making a show about Latinos and you don't give a fuck about at least learning some proper Spanish? Come on, man! And look, these first statements are just completely awful. But I do agree with her on the fact that not knowing Spanish properly does not make her less Latina, and that's fine. I saw many posts against Primos calling the crew gringos or saying they aren't Latinos or aren't Latino enough because of the Spanish. But I will get into that in another section. And yes, I agree. You're trying to make a good show for kids, especially Latino kids who don't have quite a lot of representation in animated media, and especially for the Latino kids who have no grasp on the Spanish language due to the fact that there are circumstances that didn't allow them to learn the language in the first place. However, that doesn't change the fact that you still need to try your best to portray that group of people as accurately as possible. And when most of the criticism is coming from the people you are trying to represent, well, you should take those criticisms into hard consideration. But no, she basically gave a big middle finger to her critics. Overall, this response is terrible and it just led to more people getting angrier and angrier. Then the misinformation got way out of proportion as people began to believe that Miran was the creator herself. And then people thought the creator of Phineas and Ferb was working on this show. And then everything turned into complete chaos until finally, well, the hatred just died down and people forgot about it for a while. Then, some of the episodes leaked a year later. Look, I'm going to keep this brief, but yes, 2 episodes of Primos did leak on some websites, and for obvious reasons, I am not going to show them. But from what I have seen so far, it's just another decent kids show. Nothing too special so far, nothing too big, just a slice of life type of show. But hey, I will admit, I'm kind of excited to see some of the dynamics between Tater and her cousins, and I am sure many kids who are in the same situation as Tater will enjoy this show. I sure wish I had a show similar to this one as a kid, which is why I now feel kinda bad for the amount of backlash it got. Some of it was justified, but in my opinion, others went way out of proportion. Also, it seems like from the redubs I have seen, the crew has really taken into account a lot of the criticisms. Terremoto Heights is now called Hacienda Hills, and Cuquita's name is now changed to Lucita. And there have been some updates to make sure to show that this series takes place in LA instead of Mexico. So hey, I will admit, I am pretty excited for Primos, and I do want to make a full review of the series when it comes out. Maybe it will be filled with surprises, and maybe it will become something bigger in the future. So, were we too hard on Primos? No and yes. No, because there was some justified criticisms like the negative stereotypes, bad Spanish, and a certain person's response to the criticisms. And yes, because some people begin to blow this way out of scale, spreading misinformation that just hurt the show more, and accusing the crew of not being Latino enough or not being Latino at all for not really knowing the Spanish language properly. Which brings me to my last section. I have not seen anyone bring this up in the discussion of Primos, But, like I said before, I saw a lot of people accuse the crew of not being Latino enough or not being Latino at all for not knowing Spanish. Even though clearly the creator and many people that worked on this show have told people that yes, they are Latinos, but it still kept happening. And if you're one of those people, I'm sorry, you absolutely suck. Look, I wish Miran would have responded better to the criticisms by just simply explaining that Tater is a Latino character who never learned Spanish, instead of her being an asshole and basically saying, fuck your language and I don't care to learn it since it's a colonizer language. She could have just said, hey, this show is based on the creator's experience growing up as a Latino kid in the US. And you know, she doesn't speak much Spanish, and that's perfectly fine. If she had said something like that, people would have been much more understanding, and things would not have gone so terribly as they did. And I would have agreed with her a lot more, since I do believe that quote-unquote no sabo kids deserve to have that representation on TV. Now, you might be wondering, what the f*** is even a no sabo kid? Well, it's just a Latino person who doesn't know Spanish, and that's perfectly fine. The sentence no sabo is an incorrect way of saying I don't know in Spanish, with the correct way actually being no sé. No sabo kids get this term because that tends to be the response they say to their Spanish-speaking family members when they tell them they don't know the language. A lot of Latinos in the US don't tend to learn Spanish, which is okay. What's not fine is other Latinos putting down no sabo kids for not knowing the language and for teasing and bullying them for simply even trying to relearn Spanish again. I have been seeing a lot of bullying and teasing of no sabo kids, not just in this discourse, but through TikTok, Twitter, and many other social media sites. And it's kind of sad, especially when it comes from Latinos who were born here in the US. Look, I get it. No one wants to be that odd one out who doesn't know Spanish. We want to continue our traditions, our cultures, and our legacies. But it seems that a lot of Latinos have forgotten our history here in the US, and the terrible shit we faced if we even tried our best as to even utter a word in Spanish. Due to these discriminatory issues, many Latinos in the US just assimilated themselves and their kids to US culture to keep them safe and make sure they didn't get treated the same way they got treated. It's kind of why no sabo kids exist in the first place. But it's fine if your parents just ended up not teaching you Spanish because they did not want to either. Or maybe you don't want to learn right now, which is fine. Trust me, as someone who is bilingual, this is hard. And sometimes the languages start mixing up in my brain and cause me some grammatical issues in both languages. So I get the struggle. Actually, let's use a quote from one of Natasha's interviews with The Hollywood Reporter. I think she makes a good explanation for the struggle pretty well. Quote, "My mom and abuela spoke almost exclusively Spanish, so I was growing up in this atmosphere where pretty much everyone spoke Spanish except for my dad, who spoke English, because my family's bicultural. I would absorb a little bit of it, and I'm able to understand a lot of it, but that doesn't necessarily lead to complete fluency. Just because you're hearing the language doesn't mean that you're learning to speak it or write it, or that anybody is helping to guide you to understand it. Learning a language isn't just learning it. You can't just go to a class. It's about immersion." End quote. And she's right. I am very lucky to be bilingual because I have been learning Spanish since I basically came out of the womb. I was also lucky enough to have family members who were willing to speak Spanish with me almost on the daily and help me with grammar issues or accent issues. Getting this perspective from Natasha adds more nuances to this topic and gives me more excitement to see the future for Primos. I can't wait to see how Tater develops throughout the series. Maybe there are going to be episodes on how she struggles to speak Spanish or fit into her culture. And I am interested to see this new perspective for a Latino character, as a lot of Latino characters in animated media do often speak perfect Spanish. So this is going to be a first-timer. However, I guess you could count Miles as a no sabo kid himself, but I guess that's a topic for another time. I need to remind this to people. We Latinos are not a monolith. We have different life experiences, ways of thinking, and you know what? Just overall, we're people. So if you're feeling bummed out about not knowing Spanish as a Latino, don't worry. That does not make you any less Latino. You're still always going to be one at the end of the day. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if you're still trying to learn more about the culture and language, don't let anyone stop you or tease you for simply trying. But understand this. You're always going to be Latino, no matter what part of the world you're from, or what step you're taking in learning about your culture. In conclusion, I felt that people were rightfully justified in some of their criticisms of Primos. People had every right to be angry at the many issues this show had. People had every right to be angry at Velasco's death-toned response. But despite Velasco making things worse for a while, the crew had managed to learn from their pitfalls and even fix a lot of the issues people had with this show, which is amazing, and it makes me much more excited for Primos in the upcoming days. Now, will I watch the entire show and review it? I actually might. I am pretty excited to see what the show has to offer now due to the new changes, so once the entire season of this show drops, maybe I'll give it the time of day. So if you want to see that, make sure to like and subscribe. I have memberships now, if anyone's interested in that. You can pay as little as $1 per month, and you can get a shout out in one of my videos, if you like. I have a Ko-Fi. Any amount helps, even as little as $1, so if anyone's interested in that, the link is down in the description, and my commissions are open, so if anyone's interested in that as well, the link is also down in the description. Okay, before we go, I have something to say to my fellow Latinos. Marzo 2025, Yolanda Saldivar sale de la cárcel en Texas. Trae todos tus chanclas y sus manos, porque ella, I don't support revenge and violence. This is a peaceful channel. Yes. Anyways, subscribe, like the video, comment. Have a nice day, and thanks for watching this. Bye-bye!